This is March the 8th, 2012, and I'm Everette Nichols, a member of the Oral History Committee. Today I'm talking with Jack Hester, Oscar Hay, and Bill Bason about the experiences that they've had with First Presbyterian. At Morningside Rest Home, talking to these gentlemen about their experiences at First Presbyterian Church, and more particular about their experiences with Boy Scouts. Before turning to our main topic, let's get some personal questions out of the way. Jack, when did you first join First Presbyterian Church?
Well, I don't know exactly when I joined, but I started attending when I was 7 years old, which was 1933. I participated in the Sunday school and eventually joined the church when I became eligible.
I believe you told me you had catechism, memorized the short catechism, and was received commendation on that back in, what, 1935?
Yes, I received the presentation of the New Testament in 1935, and in 1936 I received the Bible as a result of memorizing the introduction to the Shorter Catechism and then the Shorter Catechism.
Right. Now, I believe you said you did not grow up in the church, but you came pretty soon thereafter, and so
My family moved to Raleigh in 1932 when I was 6 or 7 years old, and we lived around the block, and so I started going to Sunday school there.
Right. Oscar, I believe you grew up in the church. You were there as a child and have been there ever since.
Yeah.
When did you join? Were you about 12 years old or something?
Well, I reckon I must have been, but I don't remember the exact date of when. I was baptized in the old Sunday school room that's being renovated now, and I hate to see them tear it up, because it brings back a lot of memories of seeing other people baptized there. It was a good old place to be baptized.
I'm sure it was. What was it like growing up in the church? What do you remember about the years?
Papa was an elder, and I felt like I was just a member whether I wanted to be or not, you know. And it was a good old church, and I had to go to Sunday school and join the scout troop and all, and everything. It just worked out fine for me.
Do you recall who the minister was at the time you joined?
White, Dr. White.
Dr. White, okay, very good. And Bill, I don't believe you had the opportunity to grow up in the church, but you joined pretty soon thereafter. What do you recall? What year it was?
Well, I grew up in an ex post facto church of First Presbyterian.
Okay.
My father's family were all Presbyterians, and my brother George and I were brought up by what his dad called the Shorter Catechism. So this is not surreptitious. I mean, my mother, of course, knew that I was being influenced somewhat by the Presbyterian Shorter Catechism.
Right.
But to cut to actual membership, I don't guess I actually became a member of First Church, although with my father we attended Presbyterian gatherings. Hawfield was a primary Presbyterian stronghold, and we went regularly to the Presbyterian conventions or whatever you call them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
well, what year did you actually join the church? Do you recall?
well, it was about 10 years ago, I guess.
Oh, okay. So you were.
It said from the pulpit, and was brought up Methodist and Baptist And Ed said, you take a Baptist and cross him with an Episcopalian and you get a Presbyterian.
So you were a combination then, coming in.
Yeah, not quite a hybrid, but I came up with a foot. I was a straddler.
Sure.
A straddler.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I was a Baptist, and if you recall before joining First Church, and you recall what Dr. Edwards said, Everette, Baptists make very good Presbyterians. So he liked to roll those R's.
I quoted exactly what he said.
Yeah.
I was there.
Do any of you remember any specific event, program, or activity that First Church had that made a particular impression on you, or you have a vivid memory of it?
I remember my Sunday school teachers very well.
Okay, Jack.
Mr. Joshua H. Slaughter Sr. taught boys in the junior time frame, which was 8, 9, 10 years old. And Mrs. Olive Worth was the junior department chairman, and she taught thing. And I remember we had a little stage in the area where we assembled, and we built a guardrail around it so he wouldn't step off the guard. And then Jeanette Wright was one of my Sunday school teachers, and of course Mr. William McPherson taught the boys that were 12 years old, and that's how I became introduced to the Boy Scouts, through his Sunday school teaching. That's about the events were fundamentally the Boy Scout program.
Right.
And that's how I got involved
Sure.
at Troop 2.
Oscar or Bill, do you have any specific events that you remember?
Well, this is not irrelevant. Oscar started taking me to early bird, and then to any activity actually where Albert Edwards participated.
Mm-hmm.
And special breakfasts and things, that sort of thing, you know. But this is all peripheral, because I didn't go to the church until
Later on. Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right.
But he was one of the early members of Troop 2.
Yeah.
He was in Troop 2 when I joined.
Right. Well, we're going to get to the Boy Scouts in just a couple more questions.
Well, that's very important.
Yes. How did First Presbyterian Church, how has it changed since you were a younger member? What changes have you noticed in there in terms of programs, in terms of Sunday school classes, etc., that you've noticed?
I think our emphasis in the early years was on the congregation. And it's only in the later years that we've become interested in the community as a whole and try to provide community services. Up until the time I came back in 1968, the church had seemed to be focused on providing programs for youth and programs, support of Peace College and support of Sunday schools and the congregation in itself. And it's only since I've returned that they've become this community oriented.
And I think though the outreach program has certainly grown over the years.
And we did have Mrs. Bunch.
That's right.
In those early years, and she was very influential in the early outreach.
Sure. Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about Boy Scouts. I think we've talked about had enough discussion on the general questions. When did the scouting program actually get started, and who were the leaders?
I think William McPherson probably had the big start of it, but I can't say that he was the originator. But he was the, what was he, the scoutmaster for years, until he died, I think.
No, until he went into the World War II service. He went into the Navy during World War II.
Yeah.
And about what time or who was the minister when this originated? Because we don't have a scouting program at the present time, but I was trying to...
The scouting program started when, before I got into it, because there were some senior scouts, which we have some names of, that were there, and the program was going before 1938, which is when I got in. And Bill McPherson was the scoutmaster and very able, and he had an assistant scoutmaster in Donald Kemery. They were very active and formed the troop. Troop 2 was at that time the oldest troop in Raleigh.
Okay.
There was no Troop 1.
All right.
And there was a Troop 3 and a Troop 6 and such, but Troop 2 had been formed earlier. But I don't know the exact date it was formed. Do you?
I don't.
Well,
But there's only
Yeah,
five.
I have a little something to add there. I launched on a somewhat similar course and went to the headquarters. Now, all of this is under the umbrella of the Occoneechee Council. The Occoneechee Boy Scout Council, you know. Boy Scouts were started in England and go to, spread pretty rapidly here. And a lot of us, we owe an awful lot to Bill McPherson and the First Church for providing us a place, for that matter. But I went to the Occoneechee Council on Atlantic Boulevard. It's where they have all the records. Well, to my astonishment almost, they didn't have any record of Troop 2
oh really?
at the Occoneechee Council. And they're still right there on Atlantic Boulevard.
Yeah.
But the record keeping is very remiss, to say the least.
We can tell you that Claude Humphreys was the commissioner
Oh yeah.
at the time,
We call it.
you know, and the council, if I'm not mistaken, had a room or so an office on Wade Avenue back in those days, way before it became the thoroughfare that it is now. And Occoneechee is an Indian term of a tribe that was in the area, and it still exists.
Still exists, yes.
But the council,
No, don't go. That's rude.
the council sponsored a number of events for all troops, including jamborees. And I remember before I got in the troop, they had just returned from attending a national jamboree, and a small group of them in Washington, D.C. And that was in about 1937 and 1938. It was a big thing. And I remember some of the senior scouts that were involved in that particular council. And then the council sponsored canoe trips down the Neuse, which I remember Mr. Humphreys led one that I was in. And it also sponsored what they call a camporee out of what we call the lead mines, which is out behind the intersection of Ridge Road and
Still there.
well, the cave is still there. I know it's in a private piece of private property, a house.
Was this off Lead Mine Road or?
No, it's off Ridge Road.
Oh, Ridge.
And it had.
Later became Lead Mine Road. I'm not sure.
No, Lead Mine Road is a different road.
Different road.
Yeah, it's a different lead mine.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But the place we camped was on a little creek and had a cave in it. I remember that the cave had about 6 inches of water, and we didn't dare go up in it because it was so dark. But that was also an area that was sort of set aside, and the Occoneechee Council, where we would go for weekend camps.
Yeah. What size troop did you have, or how many were in troop 2? Do you
I'd say about 30 people.
30? And do you have other members that are not present here?
Names that I went to the Memorial Hall listing of people that were in World War
Okay,
II.
would you like to call out a few of those for the record?
I may not say them in the right order, but I have a list here. There's Hugh Sheldon and Robert Sheldon, Stacy Holland, James Sheldon, Oscar Hay, George Madry, Robert Madry, Jack Swift, Vance Swift, Thomas Creedmoor, me, Walter Jackson Hester, Theodore Kellogg, Worth P. Lewis, Patrick A. Ryan, Joshua H. Slaughter, William Bason, Ben Tongue, and Ben Terrell, Leon Schaefer, Hal Thompson, Wiley Thompson, Oscar Gupton, Dick Kennison, and Dick Rice are the ones that I were able to remember and list.
That's incredible, Jack, that you remember all those people.
Well, I got some help from the memorial plaque of those that served in World War II.
So some of these people were members of our church, but a goodly number of them were outside of the church.
It was, the Boy Scout troop was an organization sponsored by the church, and they gave us a place to meet, and we met on Monday nights, and would have a pledge of allegiance to the flag, and a report and a schedule of events that were coming up, like camping trips and such. And then we would often adjourn to Nash Square in the summertime when it was still light, and we'd play
Capture the flag.
very active games called Capture the Flag and Kick the Can. And then after, I remember it became a fashion that some of us would have a nickel or so in our pockets left or bring a nickel, and after the scout meeting was over, we'd walk 2 blocks around to Wilmington Street, where the Royal Baking Company was just finishing up cinnamon rolls. And we would buy a bag full of cinnamon rolls and go out and sit on the curb and stuff ourselves with fresh baked cinnamon rolls before we go home.
That was a highlight of the meeting, huh?
Well, it was something that we didn't do it all the time, but
Yeah.
it's something that we look forward to.
Sure.
And we rode our bicycles to the meeting place or walked. I don't know of anybody that had a car in that time, a frame or
Yeah.
such. And all of this was prior to World War II.
But just after the Depression, which
Well, it was during the Depression.
meant that people didn't have cars
That was
frequently.
important,
Yes.
in that some of us, parents could not afford uniforms.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't necessarily have scout uniforms, and where there were possibilities, we had hand-me-downs. I don't think anybody had a scout hat, did they?
No.
I don't remember anybody having a Boy Scout wide brim hat
Sure.
at all. And the troop was active on Monday nights, and we had knot tying contests. I remember we had progress through the ranks. You came in as a tenderfoot at 12 years old and progressed to second class. And then I remember I couldn't get to be first class for over a year because I didn't know how to swim. One of the requirements to be a first class scout is that you had to know how to swim a certain distance. And as a result, I learned to swim to become a first class. And then the rank after that was Star, where you had 5 merit badges. And I don't think at that time there was a required merit badge list for Star. There was a required merit badge list for 10 merit badges for Life. And then 21 merit badges was the requirement for Eagle. And there were certain required merit badges in that. Earlier we talked about today's Eagle Scouts have to have a project, but I don't think that there was a project at all to be an Eagle. You just had to get the right merit badges.
Did you have a number of people that reached Eagle Scout?
I remember at least 3.
I think Josh.
Josh Slaughter was one, Leon Schaefer was one, and Ben Park Terrell, who just recently died.
Did Ben make?
He was an Eagle Scout.
I didn't remember that.
I don't think any of the boys from Baldwin Heights, well, there were sort of groups. There was a group over near Peace College with Madries, and I think Bill Presley, Dr. Presley's son, was in that group, but I didn't see his name on the list, and I don't remember specifically. But Bill, George Madry, and Robert Madry, and a group over near Person Street Pharmacy were in a patrol, they call them. And then Vance Swift and Jack Swift and Creedmoor, Thomas Creedmoor and Theodore Kellogg, and I was in a group that was out towards the Hayes Barton area. And then there was Oscar Gupton and Hal Thompson and Wiley Thompson, Worth Lewis and Pat Ryan were in a patrol that was over in the Baldwin Heights area. And I don't remember, we'd have inter-patrol contests like knot tying, and we also learned to identify trees by their leaves, which was an interesting education. And to this day, I still recognize the knots and the trees by what I learned when I was in the Boy Scouts.
Obviously, you learned leadership in the scouting program. How did this prepare you for life, your life experiences?
Well, certainly the camping experience and the hiking experience was good for us physically, and we learned to cook on an open fire, which I remember was part of it. We had a contest, a 3-day camporee in which the cooking the last meal, and you had to keep we didn't have refrigeration and ice boxes and such, and we had to keep our meat from spoiling. And I remember the troop that won that. Our troop won the cookout because we took a live chicken and kept it tied to the bushes, and then killed it and prepared it for the last meal, and that caused us to win the camporee award. We learned to dress animals. We learned to cook potatoes. Remember how we baked potatoes? We wrap them in mud and roll them into the coals and fire, Irish potatoes. And then when we thought they were done, we'd roll them out and knock off the
Burnout tongues.
yeah. And we made dough, which we call twist, and wrapped it around a green stick and put the green stick over some supports and rotated it. Cooked it over the fire for bread. And we also made a sort of a paddle out of a green fork branch and wove and would often cook our meats that way. And then we had a cook kit that you could buy, but not everybody had one, that you could boil water in and make drinks and maybe boil an egg or something like that in it.
I still have mine.
I have a cooking kit, but it's not the one I had at that thing. They were ingenious. You could put them in a little canvas bag and strap them, take them across your back.
Now, most of you guys were in World War II. How did your scouting experience help you in that phase of your life, if any?
Well, in my case, I think it helped us be aware of how to survive in case we were injured or shot down. The three of us were in the flying section. I was not active, actually in combat in World War II. I didn't get my combat experience in Korea, but these two were in actual flying combat. I think the preparation was to give you the self-confidence to act independently if you had to. You could survive in the wilderness. You could walk. You could. First aid was a part of the training in Boy Scouts. I remember we had what did they call it? Artificial respiration is what I was trying to think of. But it wasn't like it is today. It was you set pumped. They rolled them over in their stomach and turned their head and pulled the tongue out and leaned over and straddled them and pumped their lungs, supposedly to give them artificial respiration. We had life-saving courses in swimming, how to approach somebody and keep their head above water and keep them from drowning you. My experience was that not tying particularly served me well in sailing later. We had learning how to use lines, learning how to use a knife, learning how to use a hatchet, learning how to cook in the open fire, learning how to sleep. We would carry with us a big sack that would be like a sleeping bag, sack of sheet material, and you'd fill it up with leaves, and then you'd sleep on top of that. Most of us were not wealthy enough to have sleeping bags.
Or air mattresses.
Or air mattresses.
They probably weren't even invented back then. Yeah.
Well, we were taught how to dig a hole for our hips in the thing before there was the shape, the earth thing. We did have pup tents that we could erect.
I think I still got one.
Yeah, well, the thing that I got out of the Boy Scouts was through the leadership of Bill McPherson, was that I became a well-rounded young man.
Yes.
I had confidence in my ability to tackle jobs, build things. For instance, we would build a bridge or something across a creek or something like that as a project in a little area.
Had to do that to get your merit badge, a merit badge.
There was a merit badge on that kind of construction. But overall, the troop was a great experience, and it's a shame that the scouting has been reduced to something that is criticized, because people that criticize it just emphasize what can go wrong instead of what really did go right.
Sure.
I remember a canoe cruise. We cruised down the Neuse River from Smithfield to Newbern in 5 days, camping on the side. We had one canoe that got sprung a leak, and they fixed it so that it could continue.
Sprung a leak means it hit a rock.
Yes.
Or several.
Right. You were doing whitewater rafting on the Neuse River. Yes, right.
They went down to Cape Fear.
Well, it sounds like you had really great experiences, and I share your concerns, Jack, that many of our young people don't have those experiences today with the Boy Scout program.
I later became a scout leader.
Oh, did you?
Scout master.
Excellent.
But
Yeah.
at the Korean War.
Sure.
Yes, I had.
The advantage of Boy Scouts to us that were in it was that we were taught a lot of self-sufficiency and to make do with what you had around you in the wilderness.
Yeah, self-confidence and leadership abilities, I'm sure were gained from
And
that.
patriotism.
Yeah, exactly.
Every meeting started off with a pledge to the flag and a prayer.
Very Christian oriented.
Yeah,
Well, we had a lot. We had some Jewish people in it too. And I remember Leon Schaefer was a Jewish persuasion.
Who's that?
Leon Schaefer.
Oh, yeah.
I remember him.
And it was not, it was at that time all white, but there were colored troops as well. It was, at that particular time, we were not associating
Integrated, yeah.
black and white together.
sure.
That came later. Overall, I think the church did a magnificent job in sponsoring youth, not just the Boy Scouts, but youth programs. And I think it has come to pass that some of us are still members of the First Presbyterian Church because of that particular youth program. I think that we have not lost the fact that if the church is to continue to grow, and I'm 85 now, that it must continue to bring in youth and have youth programs as those of us who are older age out. And some of the things that we were taught in the church are very fundamental to the way we conduct our lives today.
Jack, I was asking you earlier before we got started the recording, when did the program end? Could you comment on that?
The program ended, I think, so like with a whimper. World War II decimated the leadership.
Membership.
Well, those of us who were members were too young to go into the service at that time.
Speak for yourself.
But and when we came back, I don't remember an activity in the church after World War II. I don't know that the troop was picked up, or there certainly was a lack of activity that I know about after World War II. When I was in college, I don't remember there being a scout troop. So it was a small time frame of a few years that affected the lives of certainly the three of us and quite a few other young boys in that time. The organization of scouts has continued nationally and in Raleigh. And I have a neighbor's son who's a Boy Scout. But the emphasis has gone from self-sufficiency in the out of doors and things like that to other things, and that comes from leadership.
Yeah.
The fact that the Okanagan Council doesn't remember Troop 2. I remember that there was a Boy Scout museum outside of Lillington that had some information on Troop 2 in it, but I think that fell by the wayside. That was a good 15 years ago. Overall, it was a very great experience.
Well, it certainly sounded that way, and I think from what you guys said, you got a lot out of the experience and a lot of confidence in leadership ability, no doubt, in doing so. Do you have anything else to add to any that we haven't covered this morning that you can think of?
I don't know of another youth program in the church at the time. You?
No.
I talked with Mac about a post Eagle Scout. You might remember the Sea Scouts and all that stuff. Anyway, we were considering, as far as
We were considering a Sea Scout troop at one time, I think.
but the war happened about then, and that changed everything.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah, there were senior scout organizations that went beyond the Boy Scouts. When you're about 15, the age, it's when the senior scouting was beginning to start. And they had Sea Scouts and other patrols. We had a senior patrolman troop too, I know, where the older, more experienced scouts were being taught to be leaders. But overall, it was a magnificent program, and I'm indebted to the First Church for having the foresight to have. We're particularly indebted to the leadership of William P. McPherson, or Mac as we call him,
Right.
and his assistants.
Well, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on the experiences that you had with Boy Scouts, and thank you for your time to give us your benefit of your experience in that program. We really appreciate the time that you've given us this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.